And if we go back a bit about what we were talking about, the reclamation and the awakening of the lineage that you were getting in contact with, of your ancestral feminine lineage. You have talked to me a bit about it, but it will be lovely if you can share how it was for you to reclaim that.
Yes, absolutely. So there were two main threads, and we've touched on both of them, but they weave together in this experience that I've had, which is, one, some of the more external collective dynamics that through slavery, through colonization, through some of the severing of the organic ways that these traditions would have been passed on, there was a deep blockage. There was a loss of a direct line of transmission and connectivity. And so a huge part of that, and the reason that my path was perfectly orchestrated and ordained, was that it first required me walking back through historically, through my research, the pain of that journey, of that history and that process, and actually even becoming forged as a being within the system of the Western academic system, in which these other ways of knowing weren't allowed, weren't welcomed, that I actually had to feel the pain of that historical pain within my own body and experience, and slowly begin to remember and awaken into the knowing that, oh no, there was something bigger than this. And I had to have conversations with colleagues and teach classes and do things where I present papers and write and research these topics to begin to walk back through the history of that pain and begin to break open within my own body, within my own consciousness, into the remembering of something bigger. So that was a huge part of the journey, and I'm so grateful to, on behalf of my ancestors, on behalf of being one aspect of this greater collective community that we are, that I was able to kind of liberate myself from that experience and those structures. So that was a huge aspect. And then it was a longer, deeper journey to then also discover that one of the other places where this feminine lineage of really powerful healing codes, energy medicine transmissions, deep offering to humanity that my ancestors, or at least to their tribes and their communities that my ancestors held, that there were places that had gotten distorted, that because of things that they had experienced, traumas or other circumstances and contextual factors, they had started to get out of what I call right relationship with their medicine. And it took a long time for me to realize that the reason that I was being taken through such deep relationship initiations in my personal life, in my family, and also in romantic relationships, along with some friendships, as you say, any relationship can be a place, but some of these more complex relationships of family and intimate partnership, they really become the crucible where we can start to disentangle these things. And so what I started to discover through showing up daily and in a really devoted way to my healing journey was that there had been a lot of pain that women in my lineage had experienced from men and from the masculine, from these greater masculine energies that we were starting to describe. And oftentimes with the intention of wanting healing, wanting truth, they actually started to misuse some of the capacities that they held in their family dynamics and in their relationships. They started to almost, as we can imagine, when you're experiencing a lot of pain, what is one of the first experiences that you, or impulses that you have? To reject, to put a wall up. And so I was seeing the ways that there was actually, even deep within me, a kind of rejection of men and the masculine, a way in which, and I was shown many energetic stories and remembrances of the ways that in the karmic and ancestral past, there had been a sense of a deep distrusting of men and a desire to close off from them completely and not believe and trust in the power of the divine masculine to hold that code and that frequency, and for men to embody that in life. And so that led to what I call one wave of these distorted masculine feminine dynamics. And I had to excavate and uncover where that was true for me and within me. There then showed to me another wave, which is that, again, if we think about that, this idea that the creation requires this divine dance between masculine and feminine, I saw the evolution in which in my lineage, there was more of an awakening to, well, there actually is love, there actually is desire, there actually is a longing for men to engage with men in the masculine again. And yet there was still that lingering distrust. There was still that feeling and that awareness, which we've acknowledged is true, that there are a lot of blockages and trauma and pain within the masculine field as well that haven't been fully excavated and integrated. And so I saw this whole wave. And again, each of these kind of overlapped and also took many generations to really move through their organic process. But this feeling of, well, let's manipulate or control men. Let's almost use them. Let's have them be part of our experience, but not fully trust them, not fully surrender. And when the feminine is in her truth, it's receptivity, it's surrender, it's openness, it's trust. Her power comes from that frequency. So when the feminine is in mistrust, control, manipulation, even subtly, that's already out of balance. And then the actual true dance and harmony between the masculine and feminine can't flourish. So again, I was shown in deep, subtle ways, where has that experience lived in my family, in my ancestry? Where is it still present within me, within my thoughts, within the ways that I'm acting, the ways that I'm not fully opening to my brothers, my male friends, the masculine partner in my life? Where am I not actually opening and allowing my feminine heart to be met and engaged, and also trusting and believing in the masculine to rise and hold his part of the polarity? So that was a second wave. And then the final and third wave, yeah, please.
In that point, as you awaken the remembrance of the divine feminine within yourself,
yes,
clearing all this past and yourself, your own experiences, and realizing that some men, or we are still a little bit behind sometimes in the remembrance of these very important realizations. So how can you deal in your reality with men that you know that still have not reclaimed the divine masculine within? So how it is for you in your own experience?
Yeah, it's a really brilliant question. And I think it gets back to what we were saying a few minutes ago about this idea of our being responsible for our own inner world first. Yes. I'm going to say it again, being responsible for our own inner world first, and understanding that we are in a living organic system with everything and everyone around us. So as I become more aware, more conscious, and raise my frequency, and as you say, understand myself not to be the victim, but actually recognize that, oh, on some level, I must also be engaging in this dynamic, in this aspect of the self that is in ignorance or not wanting to see from a higher perspective. And so as I open into that awareness and begin to evolve and interact with my counterparts from a different perspective, it is the law that everything around me has to begin to shift. So sometimes that can look like, let me actually, if I have a narrative and a belief system of not trust, that men are not going to meet me, that they can't engage, that they're less evolved than women, then suddenly I'm going to activate that code and that experience in the men around me. If I start to say, no, I believe that men are powerful. I believe that men can heal. I believe that there is the divine masculine in every single person I meet and every single man that I meet, then suddenly my perception opens and starts to look for that. And suddenly I can be met with that by the person in front of me. And then the other piece, and you'll be amazed at how things start to evolve, shift, and how the entire system begins to rise when that perception opens in that way. But the other piece is boundaries.
That's exactly what I was going through, because when I say trusting your brother, actually there is a trap in that saying, because when we say I trust you, what I'm saying is that I trust you to behave in a certain way that will not create hurt for me, right? So it's a control.
And it's outsourcing your own power.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the trust comes when you start perceiving yourself in the circumstances and understanding what it is that you need.
Yes. And so that was the huge piece, as I said, going through that journey of taking away all the layers of recognizing that I'm responsible for my own experience, and that if something's happening in a way that is hurtful or harmful to me, causing me pain or suffering, that on some level I'm consenting to that. And ultimately, as I regain my power, then I get to say lovingly, gently at first, this is what I need at first. This is what I need. This is how I want to relate and how I'm asking to be related to. And if I, over time, a little time or a longer time, realize that anyone or anything in that system cannot honor me, cannot honor the preciousness of that which I am, cannot honor the creation with which I am bringing through me, then it is my responsibility and my choice to then say that I'm setting this boundary. And this is the limit of the access that we can have, or the ways that we can relate together. One of my favorite quotes about boundaries is from Brene Brown, and she says, "Boundary is the distance where I can love you and love myself equally." If it requires me to not be able to love myself in order to be in relationship with you, then there's more distance that's needed.
Existence does not require sacrifice.
No.
And if I have to sacrifice for love, this is not the love that
is right.
I want to live and experience.
It's true.
Something for sure is out of.
And it doesn't mean that I
integrity.
don't still love the person that I'm engaging with. It just means that we can't be in that close proximity of engagement. I can love you from over here. To love you well and to love myself well, this is the distance that we need. And as things shift and change, maybe the boundary will shift and change as well, and we can come into closer relation again.
And this is a big statement of self-love and self-respect.
Yes.
So the more I do that for this particular existence, the more I stop projecting that solution and
onto the other person,
outsourcing that I demand respect, I demand love, I beg for those things. But what I'm actually saying is that I'm not honoring my being.
Yes.
have not learned yet to recognize the needs and then nurture them by saying, you know what? No. You know?
Yeah.
Osho, since early age, I experienced Osho, and I lived in India in his ashram. And the one thing that for me hit me very early in my life is the only way to learn how to say yes is first learning to say no. Is to say yes to your no.
Yes. To know, the only way your yes can be genuine and true is if your no is solid.
Is solid.
Yes.
And then you know that your yes, when you say it
you mean
really,
it. Yes.
It's like, bring it on.
And there's nothing better than a full system, full body, full soul yes. And it requires its opposite to be equally strong.
And this point for me is one of the most basic things to reclaim the power of being. Of being here in this planet.
Yes.
Having a full allowance from existence, therefore I have life to be here as I am.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course there are many circumstances, very hard, very, very challenging, that we live and we see and we feel that our brothers and sisters in the world are going through. And it's very hard to say that there is no victim. It's very challenging to say, when people are being abused or killed or enslaved, to say that. But still within that experience, sovereignty can flower by having a perspective or a capacity to be in integrity, still in the most challenging situation.
Yeah. And I think to tie those two aspects of our conversation together, I think it's equally important in the same way that we hold this creator rather than victim consciousness and understand the power and sovereignty of our individual beings. And that changes everything in our experience as we do that. Then, as we then step into our life and our world, individually or collectively, it's important that we have collective boundaries as well. So when we take that greater consciousness, then we can look at something that's happening somewhere in the world that is violent, awful, dehumanizing. And as a collective, we can say, no, that is not what we stand for. This is not who we are. This must change. And so it's not that we deny or abdicate our responsibility for shifting things on this collective plane, but it's more about from what perspective or perception are we doing that work and making those choices.
Yeah, the emergence of the brotherhood and sisterhood that together
Yes.
we are living
Yes.
this reality, no?
That's so true.
And you still had one piece.
Yeah, so the third wave, as I was about to speak to, was, and this is, we don't have to get much into it here now, but the idea that we're living this, the more complex aspects of our being as humans is archetypal. It's symbolic. There are these deeper subconscious, Carl Jung talks a lot about this as well, like our subconscious world in which there are these archetypes and we're living certain journeys through those archetypes. And so a huge piece for the feminine archetype or the feminine journey is these different waves of feeling as victim, then shutting down, resisting, then coming into this manipulation, control dynamic, and then the third wave coming into, and this is where you get into the deeper longing. One of the deeper longings of the feminine heart is the real recognition of, well, no, I really long to feel my brother. I long to feel him in his power. I want him to awaken and rise. And yet what I found for myself and for my lineage is that even within that, there was the distortion, because there was so much of a desire for that, but not enough still of a belief and trust in the divine masculine counterpart, that they said, well, then I will fix him. I will heal him. I will save him. And in that, he will then be able to rise and be the counterpart that I need. But what that formulation denies is the sovereignty, is the power, is the responsibility of the masculine to go through his own journey and heal himself, save himself. And so many of, again, both in my experience and in my ancestral lineage, there was a deep kind of propping up, a codependency, a feeling of the pain of the masculine heart. I want to take a minute to ground this, actually, because one of the things in real human experience, if we think about what it must have been like, so many of the enslaved Africans that came over were men that were taken out of their context for their bodies, for their brute strength, for their genius as it came to rice or plant cultivation and other things. And they were made to be the pawns of the white Western world. And they literally built societies and cultures on that. And they were stripped of their dignity. They were stripped of their ability to protect and provide for the women in their family. So many of the enslaved women were then raped or sold, or children were sold away. So when you think about the deep masculine pain of everything, that so much of who you were being completely attacked and obliterated by this really tragic and violent collective system, what would be the traumatic effects of that generation after generation after generation? And so what I saw in my lineage, and we see collectively in many ways, was the recognition, the feminine recognition of that pain, and the recognition that the masculine was never allowed to feel that and to process that. And because women had a little bit more space, what I saw was that the women in my lineage, and a pattern that I still held through much of my adulthood, was, let me take your pain for you. Let me process it for you. Let me feel what your heart isn't able to feel. Let me do your work for you so that then you can be free and then you can be the partner that I need. But what even that doesn't acknowledge is that, again, that I'm taking away that your own journey, your own ability to go on that journey for yourself and to allow the soul evolution through that process. And then what it also does is it adds more weight to my body, to my being, to my shoulders. It closes down my heart, my sensual energy, because now I'm holding so much energy that was never mine to hold. And again, it's another way of manipulation and control. It's saying, I'm feeling an emptiness. I want you to fill it. And I can't figure out how to do anything other than that. So let me do some things over here so that I can get something that I need, rather than recognizing that the true work is for me to do that within. So that was the deep wave of my relational journey, that final third wave of recognizing, that too is a distortion. That too is a place that the feminine medicine and healing capacity and emotional power that I hold is not being used properly and healthfully. And so it was through that, when I cracked open that awareness, that I was able to release that aspect of the dynamic and really come back into alignment with myself, with my masculine and feminine within, and realizing, oh, that was the piece that I couldn't fully regain my feminine lineage birthright to hold this power and engage it meaningfully in the world while I was still engaging and embodying those distortions. So that was the journey.
That doesn't mean that some other spiral layers will,
yes, of
will
course.
appear, but beautiful realizations to share. And the last part of trying to save, I mean, I have put myself into that situation a few times, and I have realized the disrespect that I was actually creating
Yes.
for my beloved by saying, let me fix you, let me be your therapist, let me show you where you are so wrong or so out of what I think it should be. This created such a hate from the person that I love towards me, and really coming out of dignity from the other person, saying, I did not ask for your help.
Yes.
And even though it was not asked, and sometimes there is a dynamic that, you know, the victim and then the savior and then the whole situation with that, but doing that is a deep disrespect for the person that actually you are saying that you love.
Exactly. It's disrespectful, it's disempowering, and as you say, it ultimately creates resentment, even if the person asks for it, because there, as you said, there are conscious dynamics in which someone's saying, save me, fix me, heal me, but over time their soul, because that's not truly what the soul wants. The soul wants to be in their own truth and their own power, and so over time their person will become resentful and rebel against that dynamic.
Yes, and at the same time putting ourselves into these roles create hierarchy.
Yes.
And there is no hierarchy in
true relation. Yeah.
And in our relation as brothers and sisters,
yes,
as the divine that we are, there is no hierarchy. Even if someone has gone through more experience and has a lot of wisdom that we can absorb, that other person is not more than us.
No.
It's just an aspect of us that has gone deeper, and there is a lot to drink from that well. But the idea that I need to follow, that's why for me the guru time has ended.
Yes,
completely.
We are entering into a new era.
The new era is that we realize the wisdom of our own heart.
Yes.
As being the master. And so it changes everything. When we engage in reality from this point, then then we have much to share with each other, but not from a perspective of more or less, which is normally what we do. This person is a PhD. Wow, from Princeton. My God, she's amazing. But she's just my sister.
Yeah.
And breaking down these structures of hierarchy brings the joy of sharing.
Yes.
From your being and listening from your being as well. You are not diminished.
Yeah.
You are empowered when you are able to listen to your brothers and sisters, right?
It's so true. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Because it's a deep journey.
Yes, and you know, as you know, that was, as you said, I'm sure that there will be more layers and more levels that will uncover as I continue my walk. But that for me, and my ancestors beautifully guided me along that journey as a way for them to heal as well from these patterns. And from that place, then with each layer, with each lesson that I lived, I was growing in my power. I was growing in remembrance, and I was unlocking the ancestral layers and knots of where their wisdom wasn't able to flow through and be held with integrity. And so the more that I did that, the more I have been able to embody the deeper codes, the deeper wisdom, and the power of my feminine lineage. And now to know that to the extent of the path that I've walked so far, I'm holding that in right relationship and integrity again. So that has been the journey that I've been walking.
Yeah, and this brings me to this land that we've been journeying the last couple of weeks. And what one principle that I noticed deeply is humility.
Yes.
Because they have deep wisdom, but they don't feel you don't feel arrogance
No.
when you interact with them. I mean, for sure. I mean, we cannot talk general terms. There is everything, but here in Cusco, from every interaction,
Yeah.
this is something that I felt deeply: humility, a simplicity of being. And we have engaged with the Quero Nation, and let's bring them here because this is the reason that you have come for. And when you mention them, I say yes immediately. Which is the Quero Nation? You like to mention about
Sure,
them?
yeah. The Quero people were one of the part of the Inca lineage, and they had many of them, especially the shamans, the medicine people of that community, held very powerful energy medicine, deep codes, as we said, connecting to the land, Pachamama, the natural world, knowing how to work with the cosmos and the stars, and bringing everything down from the microcosm of the human being and the human body and energy field into the vastness of the cosmos and the great universe that we live in, how to be in communication and direct relationship, to be in reciprocity. So a huge aspect of the Quero cosmology is this idea of Aini, reciprocity and right relationship. And how do you give offerings? How do you engage with communications with the unseen realm in ways that bring everything into harmony and to balance and honor the love that we are, as we've been saying. And as part of the Quero history, when the Spanish colonizers and conquistadors came, they knew and had many prophecies about the threats of this upcoming time, but they also knew that a time would come where things would be able to come back into greater collective balance. So they hid up in the great mountains of the Andes and were able to preserve their culture, their traditions, their rituals, and their sacred technologies. And a few decades ago, they began to hear the call. Now is the time. It is time to come down from the mountains and begin to share this deep wisdom that they've been holding and cultivating. So they're one of these incredible lineages, of which there are unfortunately not enough, but there are still many in the modern world where they're still holding these preserved, fairly direct channels of this ancestral wisdom and are now offering it in these times.
And we have partaken in some of these rituals with
transmissions.
Pachamama.
Yes.
And with the
Pleiades.
7 sisters, the Pleiades.
Yes.
And they took us to the sacred mountains, and then we did a whole process of honoring and ritual and offerings, and this is what in one of the rituals with the Maestro Justino, one thing that he said that I agree completely. While he was doing the ritual, something happened, something fell like this, and he started laughing. He said, always bring joy. Never engage spiritually or in life, if you could, from the space of seriousness, of rigidity, or saying, no, this should be perfect as this. Bring joy to it, so everything becomes lighter.
Yeah, laughter, play. Even one of the things I love to say is I can do deep things even lightly. I can hold the most profound, most challenging work. I can still hold it lightly, and it's such an important key
that brings me to a situation I remember in the Great Pyramid in Egypt, that I received these codes: joy, celebration, and playfulness. To bring more of that to our existence.
Yes.
To celebrate life. To be playful, to not take it so serious or personal.
And it ties in beautifully with the path that I've walked these last many years, because one of the common phrases in the spiritual community is this idea of the dark night of the soul. And as you said, you actually do need to go through the trauma and feel the layers of those trapped emotions. And that's very real. And at the same time, how can we do that work and still hold lightness in our beings? And one of the most profound messages that's come to me from my ancestors, but also from some of the other spirits of nature and other realms that I work with, was this idea that the deepest medicine of my lineage, that my many generations ago, when my ancestors knew that this time would come where their medicine would be suppressed, where they would be cut off from this connection, that they engaged in these beautiful rituals to hide it away, to protect it, to save it for a future time when it could blossom and be reborn. And they said one of the most critical keys to unlock that is when you find joy again. when you laugh, when you dance, when you play, because that will be the signal to the system that we have entered the new times.
Basé. It's like removing the filters of beliefs and seeing with the clarity of the child that we once were, without prejudice or judgment. So engaging from that space changes everything. And because one of the things that I journey here in CUSCO, I went to the Sacred Valley and I had a small ritual with psilocybin, small little dose, and I felt deep calling and then magically appear in my field. Normally this happens, it would be nice. And then I see this guy that offers this journey that takes you up in the mountain, very high, it was very challenging, but took me to another temple of the moon, up in the mountain. And what I realized, because my intention was to connect to Pachamama, I felt to honor her. And what it was revealed is that Pachamama is the host of the human game that we enter, collectively and individually. We enter into this game, and this game requires a lot of courage, because the one rule of this game is absolute forgetfulness, and this is the game of self-realization, because what we need to realize is that what we are engaging with is only our projections. It's like
a reflection of self,
a reflection of self and of this particular system projecting meaning to things. And so we are not really engaging with other beings, we are engaging only with ourselves. And because we have forget completely, we are trying to repair everything outside us, but they are only mirrors. So the self-realization comes from realizing from where these projections are coming from, and then engaging into that. And then remembrances start to happen, and remember that, holy fuck, I have decided to enter this game. And in the meantime, until I remember, it's a madhouse.
A total madhouse. And then remembering, at first challenging, it becomes so much more fun.
The play of life.
The play of life.
Wow.
The divine game that Pachamama is hosting, we can engage it consciously.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. And for our beautiful ending in these amazing times, what will be your particular take for these times? Because you mentioned the chaos, the prophecies, that the times we are engaging now, we are living a full prophecy at this time, no? From many different lineages. So what will you say to our brothers and sisters in these particular times?
There are so many things, because as you said, I believe that these are truly potent times and unprecedented times in this greater evolution of what humanity has been on Earth. But I think the biggest one would be a recognition of ourselves as multidimensional beings. This recognition that we are only using a fraction of the capacity that we actually have as human beings, as these souls that are living a human experience, that there are so many more layers to our consciousness, to our energy, body, and capacity, to our ability to relate and engage with one another, that are ready and ripe to reawaken. And one of the key doorways to this, not the only doorway, it's a doorway that's been particularly profound for me, but is through our own ancestral lineages. Because one of the great challenges of our time, and I won't say too much about this, but is because so much of these ancestral ways have been colonized as part of the modern world, there is what I call a soul wound, a soul hunger that so much of humanity has to remember, to reawaken. And so I think the important first step of that was for so many humans to say, whether it's plant medicine, whether it's Reiki, whether it's yoga, whether it's
whatever your soul
whatever path you initially chose, that was a doorway. And yet that wisdom, that cosmology may be of a particular land or of a particular people. There are those of us on a soul level that are called to become apprentices, become students, and then become masters of a lineage that isn't technically our own, but there's something powerful in our own DNA. And as we said very early on, there are codes, there are keys in our own bones, in our own blood, in our own DNA, both human ancestrally, but also our greater cosmic lineage and a greater awareness of who we are. So my calling, my challenge, my message for these times is to, whatever doorways allow or open your initial awakening, also remember to go within. Also remember to work with your own, kind of follow the threads of your own being and your own lineage to awaken your unique medicine, the codes that only you can embody and are here to carry. Because to me, that is when we will really awaken and blossom to the next level as a global community. And then we can all engage, bringing our own unique codes into this collective tapestry to usher in these beautiful times of spiritual awakening and opening that we are stepping into.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're
Sister
welcome.
Kelsey.
Thank you. It is truly, as I said, an honor and a blessing. Thank you for
My
being with
first
me on this
guest.
journey.
What a blessing. Let me honor. And a way to honor, it's kissing your hand
Thank you.
and kissing my hand. So we are both honored.
Shall I do the same?
If you wish. We are both honored into our power of being.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you deeply.
Thank you so much.
Hola, amigo.
Estamos aquí honrando su tierra. Estamos aquí.
Sí, un abrazo.
Gracias. ¿Puedo filmarlo un poquito? Estamos aquí compartiendo con nuestros hermanos la honra que sentimos al experienciar su tierra, su cultura.
Sí, está.
Digamos, usted apareció en el final de nuestra conversación. ¿Cómo es su nombre?
Nicolás.
Nicolás.